Hey guys, this is Krista from the Moratorium. Do you like grisly gore and mysteries? Of course you do. That is why I suggest you subscribe to my blog, Suspended Animation, Dormant Stories Waiting to be Told, where we at the Moratorium offer a number of lurid tales from axemen running around New Orleans to phantoms in Texarkana. And if you're feeling especially generous, head over to our Patreon, where for just a couple bucks a month, you can help the Moratorium grow. And that would be pretty kick-ass. And remember, long live VHS.
Holy freaking fun bags. We finally made it through another year. We may be limping a little like we were just raw-dogged by a ghost, but we made it through. Speaking of ghosts, Krista and I have a few tales of the unexplained with the entity and the Doris Feather story. Cue the music.
And in 3, 2, 1, I already forgot it.
You will be soon to speak as a giant, or like all the others, dead.
You think I imagined all of it, don't you? You think I'm insane?
That's feng shui.
A match made in a bathroom. Just floating into the void.
Counting you down. And 3, 2, and the one's always silent.
Oh.
Remember Wayne's World?
Yeah. Hey, a lot of people's girlfriends are in there, okay? That's what I learned from Wayne's World.
If you were an ice cream, you'd be pralines and dick.
What does he say? Calgon, ancient Chinese secret.
Oh, Krista, here we are again. But it's a new year.
It is.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Hey, we finally got past 2021.
We did.
And we covered a lot of gruesome freaking crap and murders in our last 2 episodes, which was our Christmas carnage. It just happened to run over because we had way too much crap to talk about.
I mean, nothing brings in the good cheer like murder.
Yeah, murder. I think we could have made an entire trilogy episode just on freaking John Bonet by herself. But
yeah,
it has been talked about time and time again. Mm-hmm. Nobody has any real answers. We did get some feedback on Facebook, people believing that the family had a lot to do with it and thus hired somebody to professionally kill her and cover it up. Thank you for the conspiracy theories. We'll take them all. Please feel free to, contact us and let us know what you think. Because I think even today's episode is going to be the same way. Krista, do you believe in ghosts? Your hesitation means yes. You have one in the room with you right now.
Not really. I don't.
You don't?
No.
You've never had any real ghost happenings, unexplained events?
I believe that there is an explanation, however weird, however small, for everything.
Okay.
Even if we can't explain it yet, it's the answer is there. We just haven't found it yet. I can't tell you that ghosts aren't real, but I just have never seen one.
Okay.
I've never had
Never had anything touch you in the middle of the night that wasn't supposed to touch you? You don't feel like a ghost cat?
If something touches me in the middle of the night that's not supposed to be touching me, my first thought is not going to be it's a ghost, but I'm definitely going to go into fight mode. Okay, like real quick. That definitely will scare the shit out of me.
When you think about ghostly presences too, and I think in this they talk about different smells in the house. I guess that would be hard to come by when you have 2 teenage boys.
Yeah, weird smells are definitely not evidence of ghosts in my house, And now it's funny though, because my boys smell bad. That's funny. But, Joe's niece, Maddie, she believed for eons. I don't know. I'll have to ask her if she still thinks my house is haunted, but she believed my house was haunted. She believed that my room in particular was haunted. And she told me that she saw a figure in my room sitting on the end of my bed, like kind of like the thinker, with the elbow up, you know, the elbow resting on the knee, and, and that it looked at her. Ooh. And I mean, that's really the extent of that. But I've never seen that in my bedroom, but
never heard weird, creepy sounds that you couldn't explain away by science. Are you consider yourself on the science end of it? You got to show me proof before I can really believe it.
I guess. I mean, like I love a good ghost story.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Yeah,
right? I love ghost stories. Tell ghost stories. We're gonna tell ghost stories tonight, but I've never seen one. I've never experienced one. I've cold spots and orbs and flickering lights or freaky, creaking noises. These things are not evidence to me of hauntings, that if I see something that's... Now, we're going to get into this later in the episode. We're going to talk about sleep paralysis. That is the closest that I have ever come to having any experience of anything that someone would call paranormal. Okay. But there is a medical explanation for sleep paralysis.
Okay. I can't wait to get into it.
So
let's get this started. Hey, welcome to the Moratorium. I'm Tim Kornman, and with me today is our resident ghost hunter and a non-believer, Krista Funk.
No. Outlander. I think it's unpopular to not believe in ghosts. I really do. I think most of the people that I talk to about ghosts are like, I mean, yeah, they've got a ghost story lined up, ready to go, And then there's me, like, you are all full of shit. Like, secret. I don't say that out loud, but like in my head, that's what I'm thinking.
I've had a couple of experiences myself, and maybe I have mentioned them briefly on the podcast and never really gone into detail. And I could probably tell us right now if you're not going to be too afraid to hear the truth.
The truth. Is it a bucket of truth?
It's a big old bucket of truth.
Unadulterated truth.
Yes. And to let our audience know that, yes, back in the day, I had a writing partner. I'm still considering him a writing partner, even though we haven't written anything together in a while, by the name of Michael Bradfield. And I combined our names to make this production company, which is MT Cornfield. And we were hanging out, and we both worked at the video store at this time, and we got a screener copy in of some early Clive Barker films, and which was Salome and the Forbidden. Now, I refused to rewatch these films, by the way. Michael at the time, we were watching over at his house. Michael, we had this old console TV, didn't have cable, didn't have an antenna hooked up. All we had was a VCR, okay? That's all, VHS player, and that's what we had. And we went over there, we'd go over there and just watch movies because we'd bring them home from the video store and just plug it in and go. Well, this Salome and the Forbidden, these two early, I think they're college films that Clive Barker did. One of them, which is kind of a precursor to the Hellraiser series, right? But at one point, it was a silent film. It's black and white. There's a guy dancing around naked with a boner. It's kind of disturbing. But at the end of these two short films was an interview with Clive Barker, and he's talking about the films. Well, to further explain Michael's situation, he didn't have a remote for the TV. It's if we needed to change something or turn it up, you have to get up and turn the dial, right? So we're watching this, and it starts into the interview, and the TV starts changing channels, and it goes from 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can see 6 coming in a little fuzzy. You can kind of see that it was trying to pick up a picture. It kept going. 7, 8. By this time, Michael gets up and he starts messing with the dials, trying to push buttons. What's going on? It keeps going. 8 comes in a little fuzzy. 9, 10, 11 comes in a little fuzzy. He's still messing with it. What the hell's going on? I don't know. And it keeps going and then stops on a preacher. And this guy is at the pulpit and this picture is clear. And this guy is just, slamming his fist against the pulpit and preaching. And we both just kind of stood up and looked at each other like, what the shit? And we left the house. We just walked out. We were gone maybe a half hour to an hour. We walked around for a while, just shaking it off, came back and the TV was off.
Weird.
So that was a little freaky. There was actually another instance that I'm not going to talk about right now. But I had seen a presence in his house. That's not the only instance that I had that made me believe in certain things. Now, do I believe there are spirits around us? Maybe so. Do I think they're trying to contact us? I don't know. Or they have better things to do? And you know, Krista, that I have, 7 or 8 Ouija boards just randomly placed around my house.
At this point, they could use a Ouija board like a sticky note at your house. They're everywhere. They can leave you messages.
No, there's nothing here. My house is clean. Is your house clean?
So we've talked about this. I am pretty sure that between my husband and my children, they can unhaunt the house. If my house was haunted, it is not haunted anymore. So Maddie's ghost is definitely vacated the premises.
Okay. You think it's following her around?
Or I don't have the sixth sense or something. I do have 2 cats. And, if it's true that cats have a sixth sense, then I don't see them hissing at nothing or anything weird.
Yeah.
I mean, they do behave weird, but not like that kind of weird.
We're going to talk about this a little further. And guys, if you haven't figured it out by now, by reading the title of the show, yes, we are talking about the entity.
Ghost rape.
Ghost rape.
This is going back to, people's obsession with sex with demons.
Yeah, I'm a fucking demon. Now, I love talking about ghost stories. I had a really good time talking about the Amityville horror. Guys, if you didn't hear those episodes, go back and listen to them. It was a lot of freaking fun.
The devil made them do it.
The devil made them do it. In this case, though, it makes me think about not necessarily if her house was haunted or was she haunted.
I'm going to look at it from a different point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean,
I'd hate if we always had the same point of view.
Right. I don't know a whole lot about Doris Feather. That's her name? Is that her
I've
name?
heard Bither and Bither. I like Bither.
We like Bither? We're going with Bither.
Let's go with Bither.
Okay. I don't know a whole lot about Doris Feather, but I did read that she was living in a condemned house.
Yes.
With 4 children when these investigators showed up, that she had a history with drug and alcohol abuse.
Yes.
She had a terrible relationship with her children. She had all kinds of financial troubles. Mm-hmm. I would buy that this was the product of attention seeking or a money making scheme or a mental disorder, or I would buy all of that before I was raped by a ghost.
Okay. I own the book, The Entity, which was written by Frank de Felita. Did I get that right?
I think that's how you say his name.
Sure.
Well, we'll go with that.
Frank de Felita, we've talked about on the show plenty of times because he directed the movie Dark Night of the Scarecrow, which is one of my favorite all-time made-for-TV horror movies.
It actually is good, though.
I loved it.
It's sad.
They made a sequel to it. The guy who wrote Dark Night of the Scarecrow, which I can't think of his name at this point, actually wrote and directed a sequel that supposedly came out like last year. I watched a trailer for it, and it looks absolutely atrocious. Okay? It looks horrible. But Frank de Felita also produced Audrey Rose. Maybe he wrote Audrey Rose. Yes, he wrote the novel Audrey Rose, which I have never seen. It says here on the box, suppose a stranger told you that your daughter was his daughter in another life. Anyway, this may be a movie I should see because it has Anthony Hopkins in it. Why haven't I seen that? I don't know. Anyway, I listened to the audiobook of The Entity, and it gives a semi-true account. It doesn't actually come out just like the Amityville book and say that, this is a true story. I don't even know if it says it's based on a true story on the cover, but it's more of a fictionalized account of this woman's struggles. And it plays her off as, yes, a struggling mother of 4 kids. In the book, I don't think it said that she had so much of alcohol problems. It said she did drink, but she actually went to seek help when the rape ghost, I'm sorry, I was doing air quotes there. You couldn't see it. When the rape ghost was attacking her, that she actually went to a psychiatrist and was trying to figure out what was going on, but she was very withheld on the things that were happening to her, which I can understand. It's hard to say if this was happening to you and we're like, you know what, guys, I'm sorry, I've been raped by a ghost nightly for the last 10 years.
If that were what was happening, then given the circumstances, given this situation, I would find that difficult to tell people. Yeah. But I also read that even the investigating team didn't believe that that's what had happened to her. They called it a haunting.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of evidence of this. They couldn't catch so much evidence of the actual act of rape. Now, the movie obviously puts it in a different light. And I will tell you that the movie came out, I believe, in 1984. And I am 98% sure that I went to see that at the theater, that my father took me to see this at the age of 12 to see this at the theater.
So you saw like a naked Barbara Hershey with ghosts fondling her and all of this?
Mm-hmm. I probably paused that part in the movie too many times.
I like Barbara Hershey.
I enjoyed the movie. I did. Now, there are a lot of differences in the movie than, like I said, it was more sensationalized, more fictionalized. In fact, the last few chapters in the book didn't happen whatsoever. They actually lost track of Doris. She ended up moving. She moved several times to try to escape this and escape everything. And I think now she was living in Texas, but the movie actually states, I think in the end, that these attacks were still happening.
That would make me think that she's haunted, not the house.
Right. She was living on government help. She was getting government help. Supposedly she was going to school for secretarial school. According to the book, or what I've read, that the house that she was living in was twice condemned. So this house was a shack. So if you think about that, I mean, even at Michael's house, when I lived over there, in the wintertime, we had plastic on the windows, and it was still so drafty with 2 layers of plastic on the windows that the curtains were still moving. Was it haunted? No, I think it was just a drafty old fucking house that needed to be condemned.
But there was nothing flinging you about the room and...
No. I was young. I probably would have said, come on over and rape me, ghost. In preparation for this podcast, I did watch a lot of little documentary things. I did also watch the Rape Ghost episode of Robot Chicken.
Rape Ghost.
It was kind of like a take on Scooby-Doo. It's amusing. You can watch it on YouTube. It's like 1.5 minutes long. But I also watched Ghostbusters Afterlife because I had to. Does that have anything to do with today's episode? No, but in preparation for ghost talking, I had to do at least that.
Well, okay. Who are you going to call?
This is difficult because we're talking about late 70s, right?
She told her story in 74, but I believe the movie came out in 78.
Now, actually, the book came out in 78. I think the movie didn't come out till like 84. I mean, the book actually, I think it did pretty good. I mean, granted, they made a movie out of it. Frank De Felitta, he spent time with Doris, and I think he had contact with her well after our investigators did. So Doris lived in California in the 1970s. According to the book, and I think I read this in several accounts too, supposedly she was at a bookstore and she was looking up like paranormal stuff, and which she overheard two guys who were actually, I think they were going to UCLA at the time and working in the parapsychology department, which was little to nothing in the psychology department. They were actually laughed at kind of for being a thing.
Yeah, I think the parapsychology lab that these investigators came from is now defunct. If I read that correctly.
I think I read from 1979 or something, it went defunct. Barry Taff and Carrie Gaynor were the two investigators that met with Bither as she overheard them talking in the bookstore. So she started talking with them saying, yes, my house is haunted. She didn't come out and saying, hey, I'm being raped by a ghost. She said, my house is haunted. And they actually set up in her house, I think for the matter of 10 weeks, and tried to record and photograph and capture this thing. And they didn't get a whole lot. They talk about it. Barry Taff, you can find him all over the place. I think he has his own podcast right now called The Sci-Files or something like that. And it hasn't had too many episodes, but he has been talking about these stories time and time again. Many podcasts have interviewed him. There's a lot of different interviews on YouTube. I'll have those posted up on our YouTube page so you can check those out. He sometimes comes off flaky. Some of his stories just seem a little odd, and I think I read that he's kind of like a sensitive. Barry Taff and Carrie Gaynor set up shop in her house and tried to get some sort of evidence of this, and they did get some, but for what they state happened, they got zero evidence on what they state actually happened.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that what they got was some pictures of some light that they couldn't explain that they said was paranormal.
Yeah. But
there again, to me, like, depending on the situation, yeah, maybe light could be paranormal. But in a photograph, like, okay, there's a dozen reasons why light might show up in a photograph, you know?
And one in particular that they show, which actually had Doris sitting near the corner of a room, and you can see an arc of light over her head. And they had all the lights off at the time when they were trying to take these pictures, and they were seeing these orbs fly around. But they said that this photograph was not man-made because you can see the corner of the room. And if this was a man-made light, that light would have bent and followed the wall, and it doesn't. It actually is suspended above her. So interesting. Is it a ghost? I don't believe so. But they have several pictures where they said that, I think it was just Polaroids that they took, where she said, okay, it's right in front of me. And they took a picture and the Polaroid came out just bleached white. And she said it was gone. They took another picture, and the picture, you could see her plain as day. So they said they did that on several different accounts. Now, does that mean, is an overexposed film? There's a Polaroid from the 70s. It's not like our technology was so great in the 70s.
I don't want to be, ugly or anything, but it does sound a lot like, I have a story to sell. I can make some money off of this. I mean, these guys are in a field where they're just dying to find evidence of ghosts,
Yeah. In a department that was having a lot of difficulty even existing.
Yeah.
And they were at UCLA, but I think isn't it pronounced UCLA? I think it's pronounced UCLA. First bad joke of the night, guys. There'll be more. Trust me. they talk about these different orbs and different things happening. I think Barry said it during one of the interviews that he was having with Doris. Now, they didn't catch it on film, obviously, or they didn't capture it with their slow cameras. I think he was talking about that. The reason why they couldn't get orbs to show up that they saw flying around the room is because the shutter speed on their camera was too slow. But when they came in with even high-speed cameras, they didn't get any of that evidence either. They were just unable to capture it.
I heard they had an infrared camera, too.
They said that, things would fly around the room. Pans, cabinet doors would swing open.
So they see these things, but all this, equipment that they've brought, and they're just so painstakingly just waiting for something to happen so they can come back with this evidence, and yet they don't get pictures or videos or anything of the things that they said that they saw.
Right.
I think that's interesting for a couple of guys who are struggling in a department that's just hanging on.
And, granted, during the big event that happened in the house where they actually had several witnesses to this account of these green orbs flying around the room, the orbs kind of came together and formed a shape of a man, a very tall man. You could see his shoulders and his head, and he was moving. They were unable to get that on film, but they had so many different people in the room that had experienced this as well. But I don't see any account of them coming forward and stating their case that they had seen this thing. I think that was like the big moment for them that they're saying, okay, we are on the right track. Nobody believes us because we can't prove it. And Barry Taff, I think, went on to write several books, but I don't see a lot coming out of his co-partner, his cohort, Carrie Gaynor. I didn't find a lot about him as well. The story is very interesting because I guess in the book it was depicted that she didn't actually come out and tell him that she was being raped. The love interest in the movie was played by Ron Silver. I think he was playing her psychologist at the time, but then was trying to help her and then became involved in the actual haunting and trying to prove it. I didn't watch the movie again. I've seen it many, many times. The very end of it is very sensationalized. They built a replica of her house in this big gymnasium. Everything was a duplicate. She brought things from her house to put in there as they were observing this and trying to get the ghost to appear, but also to freeze the ghost with that never happened. In truth, she just kind of disappeared on her own. I think in the movie, it also shows that she was attacked while she was driving one day and was losing control of her car. That in the book was played down a little bit more, and that her brakes were failing her and she ended up wrecking her car. But I see nothing of the true account that actually happened either. In the movie, it said that it showed that one of her sons was attacked and broke his arm. I think in the book, it states that too, that he was thrown back by some sort of force field. But she not only says that she was being attacked by and raped by a ghost, but there were 3 of them.
3 ghosts.
They were talking about a ghost train here.
Trio of ghosts.
But actually 2 of the ghosts were supposedly holding her down while the bigger 3rd one was raping her.
I didn't have time to look, but I don't think she's alone. I know with sleep paralysis, there's definitely a story or 2 about, this sort of thing, sex with the entity, or I didn't have time to look, but I'm sure there's other stories of people who, claim to have had either consensual or unconsensual sex with spirits.
I didn't find a whole lot of ghost rape stories.
Is this it? Is it just...
I'm sure there's got to be more. Barry Taff goes on to say this in some of his interviews and such, that a lot of these ghost shows that we see on television, Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures or whatever, all of those are obviously fake. I think the producers push them so much to try to find something for the show. Otherwise, it would just be boring of guys just traipsing around abandoned places and trying to find stuff and never, ever getting an answer or any kind of substantial evidence that there are ghosts. I love going to check out like abandoned places and going to check out.
Oh yeah, the urban exploring. Oh yeah, I'm into it.
Yes, totally into it.
Yeah, I'm definitely attracted to the weird and the creepy.
Are you talking about your husband?
I mean, you've met this man. But do I believe in ghosts? You asked me this. And I told you that the closest that I had ever come to having an experience with a ghost was sleep paralysis.
Okay.
First of all, I did not see a ghost. I didn't see a ghost. And,
okay.
You know, to everyone's disappointment, I'm sorry. I know what I saw was a trickery of the mind. This is what we call mind fucking.
Not ghost fucking, but mind fucking.
This is mind fucking. Yeah, your body can mess with you. And sleep paralysis is, you know, evidence of one way that your body can mess with you. It's a medical condition. And it's common. Lots of people have experienced sleep paralysis. You had it, Tim?
I mean, I've had instances where maybe I have woken up in the middle of the night and couldn't move and couldn't scream. And am I still just partly trapped in a dream? Probably. But no, not really.
I've had plenty of instances of sleep paralysis, but they're nothing extreme, nothing like... Certainly nobody coming in and taking advantage of me. Like that didn't happen. It's nothing like that. I actually do have a couple of stories about sleep paralysis, but one of them I'm hesitant to share. And the reason being is because one, it occurred to me last night, actually. It occurred to me while I was preparing for this episode. Mike comes home, we're talking about sleep paralysis, and it occurred to me that I've never told Mike this story.
Ooh.
In 18 years that we've been married, I've never told him. And the second reason is because, in my humble opinion, it's actually pretty spooky, and I think I could elaborate on it and sell it. It makes for a good story.
And are you going to tell us, or are you just teasing us?
I'm kind of teasing it. I'll tell you one right now. There was one night that I woke up and I could not move. And that is what sleep paralysis does. It causes you to be unable to move. There are two types of sleep paralysis. There's isolated sleep paralysis.
Okay.
It's kind of uncommon. It doesn't last long. And then there's recurrent sleep paralysis, which can last more than an hour. And this happens frequently. I think I have isolated sleep paralysis, and simply because they are spread out from each other. It's not common. I don't have this all the time. It's just every once in a while. And what happens, the reason you can't move is because, in order to move, you have to have a signal, sent from your brain,
right?
That goes to your arms and legs and, that tells them to move. And if you don't get that signal, obviously you're not going to move. This is what happens with the area of the brain, the parietal cortex, I believe. Anywho,
Ooh.
I guess we'll have to back up before I get into the parietal cortex.
I just like the way you say it.
I was scared it was going to come out parental cortex, honestly, because I kept saying parental cortex last night. And Mike was like, "Isn't it parietal?"
In your sleep, and he's probably like, "What are you talking about?"
I'm like, "Did I say parental?" And he's like, "Yeah, but it's cool." This is why you can't move. You aren't awake yet. You are still in REM sleep. Stand in the place where you... Okay, anyway. You're coming out of REM sleep and you're still in it. And because you're still in it, your body isn't awake yet. Your muscles aren't awake yet. Your chest muscles aren't awake yet, with the exception of your diaphragm.
Or your bladder.
And of course, this causes, shortness of breath and, that feeling that, something is sitting on you. There's a weight on you, on your chest, and you can't move. But your brain, of course, is still working. And because you're still in REM, now you've got jumbled signals.
Gotcha.
With a lack of a better way of explaining it. I believe in the scientific explanations. I just may not be able to explain them very scientifically,
Right.
but but you've got some jumbled signals going on there, okay? And this is why you can't move and why you might see weird shit when having an experience with sleep paralysis.
I buy that.
So there was one night in particular that I was laying here and in my room in this house and
Losing your religion?
losing. Excellent. Well done, Tim. Excellent. That was so good. I love it. I mean, and it makes sense that this would be what would happen, because at the time I was actually reading The Woman in Black.
Okay.
Ghost story. Speaking of ghost stories,
Never read it.
it's really good. It's a short story. It's not very long.
Okay.
It's very good. And I had read it and I'd gone to bed really late. The boys were little. I had to read when it was late at night because that was when it was quiet. Everyone was asleep. That was the best time to do it.
Right.
And so I went to bed and I don't remember waking up. Just, I was awake and you can't move. You're stuck there. And directly in front of me, I could see the woman in black. She was in my room. Did you ever see that movie?
I did. Do I remember it? No.
Damn it, Tim. Well, what was in my room, looking at me, was the woman in black at the very end of the film.
Spoiler alert.
I mean, this movie came out a while back. If you haven't seen it by now, I mean, of course, she's spooky looking and she's got that black veil on and everything like that. Now, I don't know how, but I'm aware. Like, I know that this is sleep paralysis. I know that this is not a ghost. This Jeanette Humphrey, or whatever the hell her name was, is not actually in my room.
Okay.
What I'm seeing is actually just, a scramble of mixed messages, from in my brain.
Trying to process between the dream and wakefulness. Yeah, I buy that.
Like I said, the parietal cortex, that's the area of the brain that controls how you interpret things.
And the parental part of your brain.
The parental cortex. Yeah, the parental part and the parental lobe. So in the parental lobe, this is how you interpret sensory information. So everything that you can hear, taste, or touch, or smell, or whatever.
Okay.
This sends information back to, the parental lobe. The parental cortex, and that sends information to other parts of the brain,
Okay.
So, and if you are still half asleep, like sometimes, especially when coming out of REM sleep, the information either going to or coming from the parietal cortex is strange, and it's a lot, and it might not make any sense, and this might cause you to see some weird shit.
Okay.
Your brain looks for patterns, it looks for shapes, things that it would, for objects that are recognizable to you.
Are you talking about like the pile of clothes that takes on the shape of a person when you...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Things like,
that our mind and our eyes have to make sense of what it's seeing. And we're more apt to see a person than we are a pile of clothes because we see people in every waking moment of our life. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So like the Girl Scouts, when we were doing that, and we came across, the story about the girls saying that they saw something hanging in the tree.
Right.
No, the girls didn't actually see something hanging in the tree. But maybe it was the light and the darkness at the time, the shapes, the pattern that their brain worked out was that there was something hanging in the tree.
Right.
And that was the shape that they saw.
In our lives, our brains are trying to decipher the information that we see, and where we can look at anything. I can look at the tile on my floor, and while looking at the tile, I can actually see faces and shapes and mouths and eyes, but it's because my brain is translating it that way. Mm-hmm. The tile is random made product, is not, there's no shapes there, but my mind has put that there. And there's actually a term for that, and I can't remember what it is. Somebody email us and tell us. This is not something that's been new. We see like old pictures and paintings of what is the famous...
The nightmare.
Is it the nightmare with the creature sitting on her chest?
It is referred to as the nightmare. Sleep paralysis.
Okay.
There's a documentary about sleep paralysis called The Nightmare, and there is indeed a famous painting from 17-something called The Nightmare, and it indeed depicts a woman and, the classical style painting, like she is dramatic. She is draped over the side of it. There's this smiling, gnarly demon sitting on top of her. The weirdest thing about it, I think, is the horse head above it. There's a big horse head with some weird eyes.
I don't think I've noticed that.
Honestly, I mean, there's a demon, but honestly, the horse is, in my opinion, the freakiest. The eyes on the horse are the freakiest part about that painting. And there's all kinds of different ways you can interpret that painting. Art historians definitely have picked it apart, and some of them, believe that it's the artist himself depicting a heartache.
Oh, okay.
This very real situation where he was in love with this woman and he wasn't allowed to marry her and, yada, 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 all this stuff, Or it's a painting depicting sleep paralysis. And, because here is a woman, with a demon sitting on her chest. And that is what a lot of people who suffer from sleep paralysis complain about is, I can't breathe, shortness of breath.
Heaviness in the chest, okay.
Uh-huh.
Also symptoms of a heart attack. So guys, get that checked out.
Yeah. I mean, it's, there's that.
Was that also depicted in the movie Gothic? You remember the movie Gothic? Didn't it have Sands in it?
Julian Sands?
Julian Sands.
I don't remember this one.
You don't remember the movie
But I
Gothic?
do.
Okay.
I remember Julian Sands, but not this movie.
Gothic was 1986. And yes, it's that kind of same picture, but it kind of looks like Smeagol sitting on her chest.
Oh.
But that had Natasha Richardson in it and Julian Sands and Gabriel Byrne. Gothic. Go check it out.
Gothic.
Oh, that was directed by Ken Russell. Don't check it out, guys. Don't do it. I watched actually a documentary that was talking about sleep paralysis, and there was one instance that they caught this guy on film, and I think they lived in Texas, and it was a guy and his girlfriend, and I think she had a small child. They had a small child together. But it also stated that he had some horrible upbringing and had a lot of abuse in his upbringing, but he had these horrible, horrible night terrors. Cobras! Night terrors, ma'am.
Well, night terrors is just another word for sleep paralysis. That's what it is. You can't move and you see scary things. You have nightmares, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Chronic nightmares.
I'll post this on our YouTube page, but he was made by his girlfriend to sleep on the couch because of his violent awakenings in the middle of the night, that he would wake up and just start swinging. And she showed the holes in the walls, the holes in the doors, and showing that when she goes to bed at night, she actually has to pull her kid's bed in front of the door to keep him from coming in and start swinging. And he had actually hit her once. She states one night that he woke up and stood in front of the window in the bedroom and then just jumped through it. He had to have like 19 stitches or something crazy number of stitches from jumping through this window. And he kind of woke up outside next to the truck wanting to know what the hell happened. So can we also talk about sleepwalking? Is that also kind of the same?
Sleep is such a weird thing. And yes, sleepwalking. Mike is a sleepwalker. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
He, just like sleep paralysis with me, it's been a long time since he's gotten out of bed and moved around, but he's done it before. He's gotten up and walked around. He's never left the house.
Has he ever gotten up in the middle of the night and started preparing food? And you're like, what the hell are you doing? It's 3 a.m.
The weirdest thing he ever did was years and years ago. We were living across the river in that apartment, across the hall from Deanna and Jason.
Right.
We were living in that apartment, and the weirdest thing he ever did was he was dreaming that he comes into the room with this knife.
Oh.
Yeah, that's scary. In the middle of the night.
Yeah.
He was 100% asleep, and he was 100% dreaming that I was bound, that I was tied up. He had found me this way and was trying to free me.
That's scary because in his mind, he's thinking he needs to come and save you while he's coming at you with a knife.
He believes that I am bound, gagged, all this. And I'm over there like, whoa, you need to wake up.
Yeah.
Which waking them up is, I mean, this scares the hell out of them a lot of the times, you know, because they don't know that they are acting out physically, you know, and to wake up in a weird place and not know where you are. Mike didn't always know what he was doing.
That's scary.
You know, in that instance, he's woken up immediately. And of course, I'm freaking out, you know, but he's, you know, he could recall the dream, I think, because I had immediately woken him up, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But if you're Donnie Darko and you just wake up on the golf course in the morning, you may have absolutely no idea how you got there, you know?
And get woken up by...
Patrick Swayze.
Patrick Swayze, thank you.
So yeah, Mike's never done anything that dramatic. He's never left the house. You know, he's never cooked anything.
Nothing dramatic like coming at you with a knife.
But he's had whole conversations. He's had arguments. Okay. What he's really done the most is, you know, you'll be lying in bed and he'll suddenly fly out of bed. Okay. And he's pulling the covers off, turning the lights on. And I'm like, what? You know, 9 out of 10 times he's asleep and he's dreaming there is something in the bed. There's something in the room.
And all the time it was just you.
You know, and yeah. And I would have gotten away with it too. But
if it wasn't for those meddling kids.
But no, he's never done anything dramatic like get up and like cook food or anything like that. But, you know, like I said, he has had conversations, arguments, and...
Does he remember them in the morning? No. See, that's also the case of this guy I was just talking about, that he never remembered anything that happened. There were several instances that show him sleeping on the couch that showed him get up and start screaming and running off camera, and you hear pounding on the walls or something like that. These investigators that had been talking to him, they brought him in for a sleep study, which is in a controlled environment. They put electrodes all over his head and monitored him while he was sleeping. And at one point in his depth of REM sleep, his eyes darted open and his mouth was open and his eyes are shifting back and forth quickly as if he's looking at something. And the look on his face is as utter fright. And he doesn't remember any of that. And it goes on for several minutes, and they had it on camera. They showed it to him later. And it looks like he's physically afraid, but he did not get up and try to punch the wall in or push the door in or jump through a window either. But like you said, a lot of this happens during REM or REM sleep, right? Mm-hmm. As I'm reading here, and this is in frontiersn.org or frontiersin.org. That's what it is. Frontiersin.org talks about the perceptual activity of REM sleep can generate vivid sensory experiences. Predormital or hypnopomic is postdormital hallucinations in all sensory modalities. So meaning that you could hear things, you can see things, you can act upon things, right? Most of it being still just a part of your dream. So I think the opposite of this would be lucid dreaming, right? When you can actually control things in your dream. So what allows people to then also lucid dream? I mean,
if you are aware that you're dreaming, then yeah, I would assume that, yeah, you can control it to a certain extent.
But most people probably can't.
But I think most people really can't.
It says here, sleep paralysis is one of the symptoms of narcolepsy.
Yeah.
Occurring in less than 1% of the population.
I did read that there were some, various they think are, causes for sleep paralysis, like, sleep deprivation or eating, fatty, sugary foods before bed, stress and anxiety, PTSD,
Taco Bell,
depression, anything that would interfere with your REM sleep. with the exception, I think, of sleep apnea, because going back to Mike and the sleepwalking, like I said, it's been a really long time since he's ever got out of bed and like wandered around the house and turned on lights or whatever. He might get out of bed because he thinks there's something in the bed. And in that case, he did actually make it to REM sleep. He developed or started, suffering from sleep apnea. And in that case, the problem there was he was never actually getting a good night's sleep because he was never actually reaching REM sleep.
Okay.
They put a man on the moon, if you believe.
A lot of this, too, happens from people who are sleep deprived as well.
And I found that, when Jake and Logan were younger and I would take naps during the day while they were at school or something, they were daycare when they were real little or whatever, something like that, sneak in a little nap here, I would find more often than not, I would have a spooky dream. And I always thought it was weird, why do I repeatedly have weird, scary dreams in the middle of the day? At night I dream about nothing, why? That was a thing for a while. It wasn't sleep paralysis, I was just having a bad dream. You wake up oh shit, that sucks. That was a terrible dream,
In the story of the entity with Doris Feather, or Bither, I think she was embarrassed. Now, this is what it was kind of depicted in the book as well, that she was embarrassed to tell them that she was being raped by this ghost. It also stated that her psychologist, in one of her sittings or whatever, she admitted that she had had an orgasm while sleeping and being raped and woke up to it. Do you think in your mind that all of this is connected with the sleep paralysis?
Doris Feather, however you say her name, isn't the only one who's claimed to have been either sexually assaulted by a ghost or had sexual intercourse with the equivalent of a ghost. In that, there is a documentary called The Nightmare about sleep paralysis. It's about 8 people who suffered from sleep paralysis and their experiences. One of them said that she had sex with the being that she continued to see. Now, as far-fetched as I might think that is, specifically, I do wonder if when someone says that they've seen a ghost or thinks that they've seen a ghost, that what might actually have happened was sleep paralysis. And do I think that you might be able to have lucid dreams or you're walking around yeah. We talked about this. Mind fucking is a thing. Sleepwalking, sleep paralysis, deja vu, nightmares or reoccurring dreams, hallucinations in general. Rather you have some sort of mental illness or you took some hallucinogenic drugs. But mental illnesses, out-of-body experiences, comas.
The end of the world as we know it.
Mind fucking is a thing. And if you mess with the mind, you are definitely it's going to mess with everything about you. It's going to mess with your behavior. It's going to mess with how you see things, how you perceive things, how you interpret things, how your mind interpret things. And this is, yes, I think why a person may see something that you don't, why a person may hear a voice that you don't. And our brains just don't operate the same way. What I think is the most interesting about it is, there, of course, if you Google it, you're going to come up, shadow people is going to come up more often than not. Deanna had sleep paralysis. She talked about seeing shadow people.
Guys, just so you know, Deanna was a long friend of ours, and she will be missed. She is missed.
She is missed. Actually, we're coming up on the anniversary of her death very soon. But she had sleep paralysis. And even before she knew what sleep paralysis was, she talked to me about, and that's what she called them. She called them shadow people.
Okay.
And yes, at first, she thought what she was seeing was ghosts, I'm over there. Did you take something? What did you take? No, she had sleep paralysis. As we discovered later. And I had not experienced it yet at the time. Later on, of course, that changed. What I think is interesting about sleep paralysis is it kind of reminds me of the story of It by Stephen King. Pennywise
the dancing clown. You know, Pennywise is an alien and he will take whatever. He's kind of like the Thing. I mean, he's going to take whatever shape it wants, you know?
Right.
I mean, in the Thing, I understand it duplicates people's cells, but Pennywise can just appear to you as whatever he wants. And he obviously has a connection to your subconscious because he will appear to whatever scares you the most.
Right.
This is how your subconscious works. And so if you suffer from sleep paralysis, like these shadow people, or, you know, I saw this demon or this thing with red eyes or whatever, like deep down somewhere this is what scares you. This is what gives you the creeps.
Okay.
And this is what you're probably going to see. You can't really hide from the subconscious, you know. It's like my favorite line in Poltergeist is when the little old lady comes to the house and she's
Zelda Rubinstein,
the cleaner, and she says, "Now clear your minds. It knows what scares you. It has from the beginning." Your subconscious, that is exactly how your subconscious, it knows what scares you. And it has from the beginning, you know, amongst all these mixed signals, you know, there's your subconscious, and to put it simply and comically, it mind fucks you. That's what sleep paralysis is. And like I said, the closest that I have ever personally come to seeing a ghost or hearing a ghost is through sleep paralysis. But I know that there is a medical explanation for that. I am not actually seeing a ghost. There is not a person in my room.
Right. Do you think that because that is your mindset that maybe you are not open to seeing said ghosts?
This argument actually has been presented to me before, you know, like, well, you're just not open. You know, I actually don't think that's true. I think it'd be kind of cool to see a ghost personally, you know.
Somebody go haunt this girl.
You know, as long as they're not assaulting me or, you know, trying to possess me and
as long as we can get along.
As long as we can get along, you know.
We can just hang out. I'm cool with that.
I mean, they'll clean my house while I'm gone.
Is there a ghosts-only dating site that we can get on? Spectral entities only.
I mean,
.com.
I don't think that I'm not open to the idea of ghosts.
No.
I don't want to sound like, I just feel like I'm just so much smarter than everybody else, okay?
I have a degree, bitches.
But I have a tendency to Occam razor everything, and ghosts are never the simplest explanation.
But you're also a historian, and how often do you read in history of spectral presence?
How often do ghosts come up in history?
Yeah.
All the time. Ghost stories are abundant. There is no shortage of ghost stories. I may not have had experience with a ghost. I may have not personally, you know, seen one, and therefore I can't sit here and go, yes, here's my experience, and here's how I have a personal belief that they're real. However, my grandmother was probably the most rational, the most sane, loving person I've ever met.
Okay.
And she told me that about a week after her mother died, she was sitting in, my grandma had her spot, Papa had his, and Grandma's sitting there crocheting whatever she's doing. And she said that she saw her mom walk out of her kitchen into her living room, through the living room, and went down the hallway.
Okay.
She said, clear as day, she saw her mother.
Was this just one time, or was it many times?
As far as I know, just this one time.
Okay.
My grandma was not a ghost story teller, you know. She was not a, you know, ooh, let's sit around and let me tell you this spooky story, or, you know, she didn't go looking for ghost stories or anything like that. Now, do I believe that my grandma believes that she saw her mother? Yes. Do I know that she actually saw her mother? No. Do I know that my grandma was extremely heartbroken when her mother died? Yes. So is it possible that my grandma saw what she wanted to see? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can't explain that experience, you know. I don't think she lied. Like I said, she believes that she saw what she saw, you know.
And that's what I think about, like, a story like this. Now, if we were to talk to Doris, at some point, she's telling her own story, and you got to believe that, I believe that you believe this happened, but I can't believe this actually happened. because I did not witness this? Do we also try to make sense of what we see, and this is the only rational explanation we have, which is an irrational explanation?
You're right. I'm a historian. And in my humble opinion, it is perfectly natural. It's human nature, I think, for us to, when we can't explain something, we either, deify it or we give it some kind of, it must be paranormal, witches. It's the evil hand of witchcraft. We come up with some bizarre explanations for things.
Yeah.
And we are content with that. And I think in a lot of cases, I think there's a lot of people that want those things to be real.
So do we trick ourselves into believing that it's real? Possibly. This could be brought on by angst, pain, suffering, sickness. I myself believe that there is something more. I want to believe there is something more. And whereas I may not be a religious person, I still think there is something more than this life.
Now we're getting into the subject of religion. Like you're talking about something that's
Sorry, guys.
on a different level, But there again, that poses a question. There's a conundrum there. And I believe in the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.
But not the Father, Son, and the Holy Rape Ghost.
Someone has asked me before, I can't see how you can believe in God, but you don't believe in ghosts. I actually can't explain that, but
am not going to.
I'm not going to.
That's a whole nother podcast, and that's not what you came here for.
We're getting into religion. Ghosts are one thing, a tormented spirit can't decide what it wants to do, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. But is there something out there when you die? What happens when you die?
Do you become a ghost and start raping people?
We can watch Flatliners and, get an idea of what happens when you die. But I feel like, ask Kiefer Sutherland, I feel like this is a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a very bad idea.
His was the scariest one in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
And believable. Yeah.
So I know, guys, you came to hear us talk about the entity and about rape ghosts, and we kind of got off on a trail, and we're going to continue to do that. Sometimes we won't stay on topic, and we're just going to follow wherever the conversation takes us. I enjoy that. I do not believe in having a scripted show. So I like an open format, and we'll see what we talk about when we actually talk about it. But that being said, I wanted to tell people, if you are experiencing any kind of ghostly presence, if you have a ghost story you'd like to share with us, please email us at moviemoratorium@gmail.com. I want to hear your stories. I want to talk about your stories on air. I think it would be a lot of fun. Please send us your stories.
Okay, I don't need to explain that I'm a nerd to you. You know this, but...
Nerd.
So
nerds.
I love mountains. I love the big daddies of the world, okay? Like Everest, K2, Lhotse, Broad Peak.
The
Gasher Brahms, Makalu. Okay, the big daddies. K2 is my favorite of all of them. And I read these mountaineers' books. I read their books, and a lot of the times it's, really scary shit that happened on these mountains, dangerous situations that they're in, so on and so forth. Nothing to do with ghosts or the paranormal. However, I was reading this book. I have a book on my shelf called Savage Summit. K2 has a nickname. It's called the Savage Mountain.
Savage Mountain.
Yeah, it was given this nickname in the 50s when the American team gave back. I think it was the American team, but one of them was like, that mountain is a savage, and the name stuck, and it's a Savage Mountain. I was reading this book called Savage Summits by Jennifer Jordan. It's about the first 5 women who climbed K2.
Did they climb together?
Not together. No, different times.
Okay.
And K2 is not kind to people in general, but it's particularly unkind to the females, to the ladies. And anyway, this book was about the first 5 women to successfully climb the mountain. And in that book, she told a ghost story, and I was like, holy shit, it's a ghost story on the mountains. It seemed like an odd place for one to occur.
People have died there. A lot of people.
In the early 90s, I think it was like 91, 92, something like that. There was a mountaineer, his name was Scott Fisher.
Okay.
He actually died on Everest in 96.
Okay.
Jake Gyllenhaal played his character. They made a movie called
And Brokeback Mountain?
Everest.
Wrong mountain movie.
Jake Gyllenhaal played him, but... Anyway, Scott Fisher, in the early 90s, Scott Fisher went to K2. And, they show up early at base camp to acclimate before they actually climb the mountain. Okay. And so he had showed up early in the season. There were no other teams on the mountain. So everyone was still at base camp. They'd gone up to store oxygen, build their camps, set ropes. But nobody had actually been any higher than, camp 2 or 3.
Okay.
And so they're at base camp. It's late. They've got their radios on. They're all in their tents, but they've got their radios on. And Scott Fisher and his bunkmate are in their tent, and they got the scare of their life when all of a sudden it went from silence, all you could hear was, the wind, to, this loud voice crackling over the radio.
Okay.
It is a woman. She had a British accent, and she was screaming into the radio. Camp 4 to base camp. Camp 4 to base camp. Do you read me? Camp 4 to base camp. Scott Fisher is, first of all, he's mortified. He's like, who the hell is at Camp 4? Camp 4 is the last camp before you head for the summit.
Okay.
And it was very early in the season. There was nobody on the mountain. There was no one scheduled to be on the mountain. Shouldn't be anybody at Camp 4. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, everybody gets up. Everybody's scrambling around. Everyone's asking questions. What's going on? Yada, yada, yada. Nobody knows who it could be. And they're trying to radio back to this person, but they never hear from this woman the rest of the night or the rest of the trip. So in the meantime, they find out from Pakistan, that indeed there were no other climbing permits. If there was anyone on the mountain, they were on the mountain illegally.
Okay.
When it came time to actually make their summit bids, no doubt when they got to Camp 4, this is what they're talking about. Hey.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that voice that crackled over? Yeah, I remember the voice that came crackling over the radio. I mean, it scared the shit out of everybody. There's nothing there. There's no signs that there were any other climbers there before them. But they all, clear as day, heard this voice come through on the radio. They heard it.
Okay.
But in 1986, I believe it was, there was a bad storm over K2. And it trapped a bunch of climbers at Camp 4.
Okay.
And several of them died. And one of them was a British woman. Her name was Julie Tullis. And that's where they left her body. They left her there at Camp 4.
So her voice carried through space and time for several years after.
It did. And then
Scary.
Fast forward to like 2015, I think it was.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes bodies or objects make their way around the glacier. It runs around the mountain, and things will just pop up at the bottom of the mountain. It will take 20 some odd years for it to make it, but the glacier moves, so things are going to move with it. And I think it was in like 2015, something like that, a voice recorder popped up in the glacier.
Okay.
And the damn thing worked. I mean, they had to put new batteries in it and shit. I mean, they got the damn, they got it to work. And whose voice came out of it? It was Julie Tullis's. It was her voice recorder. She didn't take a journal or anything like that. She took a voice recorder so that she could just take an audio diary of her climb.
Did it also have her last moments?
I don't know. I've never heard it. I don't know what it says.
Creepy though.
But it's a ghost story, and
it's a ghost story.
It's a ghost story.
No rape, just ghosts.
No rape. It's not your typical ghost story. I mean, like I said,
no.
I was not expecting it. Here I am reading this, reading about these women who climb K2, and then here's this
this ghost story that just popped up in the middle of it. And I was like, that's spooky, but okay. Stories like that really pose the question, like, I mean, are you really going to tell me that Julie told us that her spirit is stuck at Camp 4 on K2?
Maybe.
That would suck.
That would suck.
I mean, people like, you know, man, the light was flickering in my bathroom, my toilet seat's going up and down. Like, really? Like, why would a ghost want to haunt anybody's bathroom?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly.
There is no Dana, only Zool.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
No,
and I feel
fine.
My house is haunted and I know it.
Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. I've had a lot of fun, Krista. Thank you for sharing everything with me.
There's a ghost watching me in the shower.
Anyway, guys, hey, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Go check out our website at themoratorium.com. You'll find all of our links to all of our different shit. You go check us out on YouTube. You can check out my playlist that'll have all sorts of different stuff. Krista, please send me your links too, and I will throw them in, and everybody can experience what we've kind of looked up for this.
And on a serious note, for those of you that have never experienced sleep paralysis, there will come a time when you probably will experience it, and it's going to freak you out. But if you have the power to remember this dorky podcast and remember the dorky words that we said, then you can somewhat control it by remembering that what you're seeing is not real, and you might even be able to have some fun with it, actually. Just saying.
Yeah, just have fun with it.
Everybody who suffers from sleep paralysis are like, fuck this girl!
If it's actually a ghost too, go ahead. Have fun with it. All right, guys, let's wrap up this episode. Please go check us out on our social media. Go over to our Facebook group. We have a lot of fun. I'm posting every day on that. Please go check us out on Twitter, Instagram. I'm still putting up some TikTok videos. You can also find those videos I put up on Instagram Reels and also on our YouTube page. So go check us out on all the above. Please go on over to our merch shop. You can find all of our links to everything at themoratorium.com, but go check out some merch. Buy a t-shirt. Please try to help support this podcast. Go over to our Patreon and throw us a few bones.
Help us put groceries in our refrigerator. That shit's expensive.
Go like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend, tell a family member. Force your mom to listen to this show. Please check us out. Help us out. We appreciate all the above. Anyway, what do you say, Krista? Let's shut this bitch down.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
You've been listening to a special edition of The Moratorium, an MT Cornfield production. Tune in next week as Krista and I dig up a cold case or two. If you have any true crime suggestions, or just want to tell us how much we really suck, you can contact us at moviemoratorium@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and long live VHS.